Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for taking the opportunity, especially in person.
Certainly.
So, Chairman Nadler says the president committed obstruction. On what basis?
Well, I think there's reason to believe that he has consistently obstructed the administration of justice. You can start Exhibit A being the termination of James Comey, who at the time was presiding over a national security investigation into whether Russian spies cooperated with the Trump campaign to sell out our democracy, interfere with the election, and artificially place Donald Trump in the presidency. It's extraordinary that any president at any moment in American history would terminate the lead investigator. Donald Trump did it, and then indicated publicly that he did it because he was concerned about, as he called it, this Russia thing.
There is a sticky wicket to deal with legally there. However, that's not what you're doing. My understanding of context, tell me if I'm wrong, is that politically, looking at abuse of power makes obstruction something different. It makes it a pattern of behavior that you believe collectively is beneath the norm of the office, not necessarily a felony. Is that a distinction that you guys want to draw here?
Well, I think that is part of the distinction. We're looking at, one, a broader culture of corruption. Two, whether that was a pattern of abuse of power that this president has consistently engaged in. He is charged constitutionally with taking care that the laws are faithfully executed. It appears that it may have been the case that he is consistently undermining the rule of law. But we want to find out the answer to that question. And then, of course, there's the obstruction of justice component. Not only did he fire James Comey, he fired Preet Bharara, who was the prosecutor presiding over investigations that subsequently came to light in the Southern District of New York. He fired Sally Yates. Doesn't seem to have been a reason why he did so other than she was concerned about Michael Flynn possibly being a Russian asset, communicated that to someone at the White House. Next thing you know, Sally Yates is gone, and even fired Jeff Sessions because he was just frustrated that Jeff Sessions had recused himself. These are all top investigators at the DOJ or the FBI.
All subordinate to him, and the executive has tremendous power over them. That becomes the legal difficulty. What you're looking for is political buy-in. How do you get it? From the Republicans. You'll work 75% of your own, and they're basically lined up here anyway because they have growing fundamental opposition to the president. I give you that, Congressman. But on the other side, there needs to be overwhelming evidence of anything to get them to go against one of their own. How do you get there?
Well, I think we're commencing this investigation without having a predetermined outcome. We just want to gather the facts, apply the law, and allow the American people to sort of make a decision about what actually has transpired. One thing is clear is that there is a cult of criminality that has surrounded the president of the United States that should trouble everyone, Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
But isn't that what Mueller's for? You're going to deal with fatigue. We just spent a year and a half. People have been juicing the outcome of what it is. Scrupulously on this show, we tell people not to set themselves up for disappointment with the Mueller probe. I'll get swept up with everybody else. Forget it. But when Mueller's report comes out and it's thin or it's largely redacted or it's kept from them, people are going to be like, that was a waste. You're going to have to deal with fatigue, that people will think that what you're doing is what they've already seen done. How do you deal with that?
Well, Mueller's report really is anchored in a national security investigation in terms of whether there was actual collusion between Russian spies and the Trump campaign. And by the way, Chris, it does seem to me that there appears to have been a triangular relationship between Russian spies who attacked our democracy, WikiLeaks, and members of the Trump campaign. The glue may have been Roger Stone. We'll see what the investigations unfold, but these are things that the American people should know. We also have a separate and co-equal responsibility as an independent branch of government to make sure that we serve as a check and balance on a potentially out-of-control executive branch.
So 81 people are on the list. The question will become how much is too much? How much of our time and money has been taken up by going after somebody that you just don't like, that he got elected? How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, we're going to continue to focus primarily on our For the People agenda. That's an affirmative agenda focused on kitchen table pocketbook issues. anchored around lowering health care costs with a focus on driving down the high cost of prescription drugs. We've already had several hearings in that area. You'll see legislation forthcoming shortly. We're working on a real infrastructure plan, $1 trillion to fix our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, mass transportation system. We think it'll create 16 million good-paying jobs. We want to do it in a bipartisan way. This week, we're going to move H.R. 1, which is our reform legislation to clean up corruption and bring our democracy to life in the era of voter suppression.
So you do both?
Absolutely. We have a constitutional responsibility to do oversight, but we will not over-politicize, we will not over-investigate, we will not overreach, but we will do our Article 1 constitutional responsibility.
Was Michael Cohen the right first foot to put forward?
Well, Michael Cohen was an important witness to the extent that he's closely connected to the Trump organization. You have several layers of possible criminality. It's extraordinary that this is the situation we find ourselves in.
Well, you have probable criminality with Cohen's connection to the president. I mean, there's a very, very strong case that he admitted felony. Now, the new defense is it's not a real felony because he never tried it in court. He only admitted to it, which, of course, means nothing in the criminal justice system. It's absurd in the criminal justice system, but politically, they'll say it didn't really ever happen. But you know that while President Trump was in office, he was still part of what was going on there. It just doesn't seem the Republicans care. In that hearing, they were like, nah, we don't believe him, and this isn't that big a deal. And that's a felony.
Well, they could care less because they're functioning like wholly owned subsidiaries of the Trump presidency and not like independent representatives consistent with James Madison's vision of the Constitution. So that's unfortunate. But if you think about just Michael Cohen's testimony, he presented evidence or reason to believe that there was tax fraud, insurance fraud, bank fraud, and electoral fraud, and a whole host of other things that he's probably discussing with the prosecutors from the Southern District of New York. Seems to me that that was a reasonable place for Chairman Elijah Cummings to start.
Why Corey Lewandowski?
Well, I think Corey Lewandowski falls on a list of individuals and entities that have either been interviewed by the special prosecutor, interviewed by the Southern District of New York, or have fallen within the sort of span of individuals of interest that outside investigators want to see. So what Chairman Nadler indicated was that we were going to reach out to either talk to or get documents from individuals who have already produced documents so that it's not a fishing expedition, but it is part of our own independent oversight responsibilities. Corey Lewandowski, obviously, as the initial campaign manager to Donald Trump, has something to say about what may have taken place between the Trump campaign and Russia.
So there's nothing specific to him. It's about getting a feel for what you guys are looking into as part of oversight.
Well, that is correct.
All right.